Welcome to today's PEG Access Advisory Committee meeting. I'm Carlin Reed. I'm the chair of the committee. And what I'd like to do now very briefly is note two things. First, we are being recorded. And second, to take a quick roll call so we have the members here. Carlin Reed, that's me, aye. Ruth Lauer.
Aye.
Cord Booth.
Aye.
Vince Carlson.
Aye.
And I see that Scott Hopkinson is not here yet. He may be joining us later on. We have a couple of special events planned for today. The first of which, after we do a couple of administrative things, will be to hear about the PEG budget. We have Kate Hodges and Aaron Stevens graciously presenting today, and I understand that Aaron's going to take the lead on that. We're also going to be talking briefly about the PAC Programming Awards, the nominations for videos that have been done between March 13, 2020 and April 1, 2021 that merit special attention. We'll get a short update from MMN on what's been going on there. And if we have additional time, we're going to be looking at the PAC charge and some possible revisions. That particular piece may be carried over till next week because we have a lot of things going on today. And we'll see how things work out. So let's go ahead and get started just very briefly. We've done the roll call. We have some minutes to be looked at. This is the March 11 PEG Access Committee minutes. And Ruth, thank you once again very much for preparing that set of minutes. Do I have any suggestions on changes or amendments to those minutes, please?
Hold back. May I move approval of?
Please do so. There's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a second. That's great. Okay. Any discussion? Any amendments? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hearing none. Could I have? We're going to do a roll call vote. Carlin Reed, I vote aye to approve as presented. Ruth Lauer.
Aye.
Cord Booth.
Aye.
Vince Carlson.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. And it passes. Appreciate that. Okay. Minutes are done. All right. Next meeting is May 6th, scheduled at 9:30 in the morning. Is there anybody here who's going to have a problem with the May 6th, 9:30 a.m. meeting for next time? Okay. All right. That looks good. I'd like to also at this point, if you can, take a look for the June meeting. We don't have a date set at this point, and I wasn't sure if we should set June, but I think we probably should because we're coming up close to town meeting, and there may be one or two things we want to discuss. I'm looking at the June calendar, and a couple of dates I'm going to suggest would be June 3 or June 10. They're both Thursdays, and I don't know how Thursdays work for you folks. Either 9:30 in the morning or some other time. And I'm looking first to Cord Booth to give me an idea because I know his schedule is really pretty tight in June.
So on the 3rd, I have a 10 o'clock. On the 10th, I have a 9:30. So if we could make it late in the morning, that'd help me, but I will at least get here for a quorum purpose.
Good. I'm flexible in either one. I suspect that if there's anything, there may be one warrant article number 41, the broadband study article, we may want to take a position on because it can relate to our committee, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. There may be something else, I have no idea. Now, I don't have a preference on doing it in the afternoons on the 3rd or the 10th. Ruth and Vince, how do you feel about those two? Ruth, you will not technically be on the committee at that time, so you'll be rolling off. That's right.
Yes,
okay.
This is true. Although I'm not sure with the placement of town meeting. It says that we serve until the end of May, but because of town meeting, we might have to serve until the end of town meeting.
All right.
So
That is
I'll be
correct.
flexible.
That is correct.
Okay, hold on. Kate, would you tell me what is correct again? Because I need this for the record.
That the committee members historically serve until the end of May, but because town meeting is delayed, they serve until the day after town meeting concludes.
Okay. All right, that's good. That's good. Okay, so Ruth, you and I are stuck on here until at least June 13th. All right.
There you go.
So that means we'll be able to do that. All right. I see that Scott is about to join us. Scott, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. We've approved the minutes so far. What we're talking about is a meeting in June, either the 3rd or the 10th. And it sounds like Court, your schedule on the, let's take a look at the, let's try it on the 3rd, that Thursday, Court. How does your schedule look that day?
I've got a 10 to 11 meeting with PTG presidents. So before or after that, that usually takes about an hour.
Let's do it afterwards. How about 1 o'clock? I'm thinking 1 to 2:30.
That's fine with me.
Vince, how about you for Thursday, June 3rd, 1 to 2:30 for a meeting?
Yes, that works for me.
Okay, Ruth, what about you? 1 to 2:30?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, it's good for me on that. Scott, are you able to let us know about your schedule? I don't know. Okay, all right, I'll check in with him later on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Okay,
Yeah.
Scott, June 3 from 1 to 2:30 p.m. How does that sound for you, Scott? All right, I can't hear you now, Scott. So let me know when you do come back online. All right. So June 3rd, let's set the meeting then for June 3rd, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Okay, good. Move that to the next one. All right, so that's the meeting, June 3rd. Great. Okay. All right, now at this time, hey, I'm 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Excellent. Because I wanted to start the budget at 1:15. It's 1:13. All right. We've done the meeting minutes and we've set the next committee meeting. So now I'd like to have Aaron take us through the PEG budget, if you'd be so kind. Go ahead, Aaron. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see if I can do this without showing you all the open tabs I have. It's always a little bit embarrassing to see that I have 50 things open.
That's part of the fun of this.
All right, can you all see the Excel sheet?
Not, I've got to move it from one window to the next. Hold on. All right. Switching things around. Got it. Okay, I'm good. How about the rest of you folks? Doing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fire away.
Is this the revised one or the first one?
This is our draft budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Carlin, I think I saw, was there a copy that you had that had a couple
Yeah.
of charts at the
That's,
bottom?
the charts at the bottom, I made one of my own and based on an earlier version I saw. This is the replacement one, so this is the correct one. This is the one we should be focusing on.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I found it.
All right. All right, so let's get started. So we're starting up at the top at the operating revenues. So as you can
Hi,
see,
folks. This is Scott again.
Scott, hello. Are you
I
in now?
apologize. Believe it or not, I am often in many meetings and crash my system. So I'm on my phone and I'll have to stay on my phone while I try and recover my system. Thank you. And the date you mentioned works. Thank you very much.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's great, Scott. Aaron, before you
Okay.
start, could you make that screen a little bit larger? If that's possible?
sure.
Otherwise, I have to get really close to the camera. I don't think you want that. All right, good. That's great.
That's better?
Thank you.
Okay.
Much better. Go
All
ahead.
right. All right, so we are looking at the fiscal year 22 proposed. So we have a $315,000 that we are assuming from Comcast revenues. That is assuming a 5% reduction year after year. We are also assuming a $75,000 from Carlisle fees. Those are studio fees that we collect from them, as well as what we are projecting we will be getting from our contracted work with them. And then our total operating revenues at the top there are $390,000. So moving down to our operating expenses, we have, sorry, I have to move you guys. Okay, so I can see my whole screen. So we're looking at our personnel services here. So the personnel expenses, we have a proposed $264,000, which comes from all of the our staff, as well as our non-personnel services. Or sorry, our personnel services are coming from right down here.
Whoa,
Sorry?
the moving fickle finger of fate was just too hard to absorb there. So you're saying 264K personnel
Yes, we'll get down to that at the bottom. I'm just showing you where it's coming from now. We'll go through it. Okay, so the non-personnel services are come from our facilities and maintenance, our purchase services, our supplies and materials, and any sort of other expenses that we see coming up. Those are things like supplies. Those are little things that come up like something breaks. We have that other expenses in case we need to buy a part, something like that. So that comes to 29,000, and that is assuming a 3.5% raise across everything except for the purchase services, which is coming directly from contracts that we have. So we have those numbers for the next year. In terms of the general fund services, we have the budget for the PIO's portion, the human resources, finance administration, treasury, accounting, and facilities maintenance. All of that comes $50 in total. And for all of this, we come to our $349,000 operating budget, including the personnel, which we'll go through just at the bottom here for the authorized positions. So down here at the bottom, oh, can you guys still hear me? It says my internet connection's unstable.
Can you go back to the previous page for a sec?
Sure.
Are we going to be getting a copy of this at some point?
I think you should already have it.
Yeah, you should have a copy in the email that I sent you
Very
yesterday,
good.
the day before.
Thank
So
you. Good. All right. All I need to hear. Thank you.
So the authorized positions down here, we have assumed a 2% increase, which is what the town manager and finance director assumed for COLA, cost of living increase. So that is a proposed 2% increase for all of our staff. If you see the little red note here, that isn't my previous note, so that can be ignored. That did not get taken up before it got sent to you guys, and I apologize. So we have the station man. Sorry. Okay. We have the station manager at $63,000, the media technician at 58, the education coordinator at 46, and the videographers, the lead producer at 46, the education coordinator at 51, and then proposed $44,000 for videographers, which are equaled out to about 1 FTE. And so the total there is $264,000, $548,000 for our total authorized positions. Moving down a little bit further, we are getting into, we don't have anything in the educational programming, so we're not quite sure what's going to be happening next year. We are waiting for the governor to lift any of the emergency orders before we do anything there. We have our employee benefits, which is all calculated through HR, I believe, right, Kate? As well as our payroll taxes, that is all done independent of us.
Finance.
Finance, yes, thank you. And then down here at the bottom, we have our total, which is the $313,000 for the personnel costs. And then, so we have for all of our revenues, $390,000, personnel services, $313,000, non-personnel services, $29,000, general fund, $55,000, which all comes out to $397,846 for operating, and then $102 for capital, totaling us at $500,646. And that is the general overview.
Can I hold you right there? Could you explain a little bit more the difference between capital at 102,800 And from reserve 110,023.
I'm gonna tap in Kate for this one.
So I could take that one, yep. So we receive money, revenue from Comcast that is put into a fund, and we also receive or have received in the past capital monies that are put into a fund. And depending on the amount that we spend in any given year, sometimes we have monies left over. This is similar to when you see the town have what they call the cash balance. And so those are rolled into an account, and that account for PEG services is up to about $1.4 million. And so what we do throughout the year is we put out what we think that we are going to use as far as expenses, and we lump in capital to that. And we come up with a base number, and then we project what we're going to receive in revenues. And because we aren't sure what we're going to be able to do as far as programming or anything that we could charge or reap any type of monetary benefit for other than the Comcast franchise fees, we're projecting that we need to be able to take some of that money out of the fund balance. In layman's terms, it equates essentially to what would be someone's savings account. So we're taking a portion out of the savings account, and we are allocating a smaller portion, although not significantly smaller, to capital. So there's $102,800 from savings that's going to be used for capital. Capital is relatively subjective, as you know. Oftentimes we plan on doing something, and it turns out either that we don't have the time or that we're shifting gears. And so we have the ability to be able to spend up to $102,800, but we certainly do not have to.
Got it. And the actual warrant article that you're offering for this town would be for the total of the 500,000 figure?
That's correct. And with a special revenue account, which this is, we have the ability, of course, to make more and receive more. So if for some reason, or hopefully our hope is that the school is able to open back up, and we're able to have another robust programming with the community education piece there. And so we can obviously collect more revenues than we're projecting, but our spending has to stay in this particular area, unless the one thing that could happen is if for some reason, when all of the restrictions regarding COVID are lifted and everybody is flocking to take classes and barking down the door because they want more access to PEG services, it could be possible that we need to hire more part-time folks in order to fulfill that. And so it might be possible that if that's the case, we may have to come back at a special town meeting and have a different appropriation if we're going to expend more than the 500. I'd like to think that would be a wonderful problem to have. I'm not entirely positive that that will come to fruition this year.
Got it. Thanks.
I wonder if I could speak to the PIO charge. It looks like it's going to go from about 14,000 to 32,000. And I have two questions. One, does this represent a percentage of your time, Aaron? How's that calculated? And two, which may be connected, I don't know. Do we jeopardize ourselves in the future if we're looking at this source as a salary source? I'm guessing not if capital monies and this savings account, as Kate refers to it, is fungible for personnel, which I'm sure it is. Can you speak to how we derive that number?
Yeah, I can do that because that actually comes from over here. So that number that you see is 40%. It's a little bit less. It's about 38% of Erin's salary, and then 5% of mine and 5% of the town managers. There is no contractual or obligation that we have. This is not an enterprise fund. In an enterprise fund, we of course have to be able to account for that. This is a special revenue fund. And so should we ever get to a point where either the PAC or any other group wants to say that these fees and costs should not be borne from this fund, certainly that's a conversation that can be had with the select board, the finance committee, and the town manager. As of right now, we had done this because Erin, in her capacity as public information and communications, oversees and is acting as the executive director. If we get to a point where that is no longer the case and the PIO job morphs into something else, then this charge wouldn't be there. This is 100% related to PEG services. If we ever got to a point where we are going to be subbing out or having an independent contractor come in and perform any portion of the PEG services, you'll see a corresponding decrease in this as well.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Aaron, I have a question on the education coordinator. I believe that was a position that was on hold, wasn't it?
Yes.
Is that hire in process, or is that person on board yet, or what's the status of that?
So we are still holding because we, at the time being, we don't have any sense of when the school is going to be opening up for us and when we're going to be able to interact with those students in the way that we feel the position needs to. And so we are holding off. We're depending on how things go. Summer, something like that. It really is dependent on how vaccination's going, how the state feels that things are going. So we're just sort of playing it by ear. We have it earmarked for funding in case we are able to bring somebody in, but at this time we're not hiring for that position right now.
So I should note, Vince, that we are doing videography in-house at the school department, but it's somewhat limited. But we are continuing on our own at the school department level.
Is there a job description? I think it may have been circulated before, but I don't remember. Is there a job description or?
Yes, there's a full job description and it has been rated and graded. If we were to decide that we wanted to go out and advertise for that tomorrow, all of the administrative pieces are in place. Our concern and my concern just as a department head is, paying someone to do a job that we can't really have them do. And I'm concerned right now that we aren't having interactions either on small levels or even as a group level right now with the community. And until those restrictions are lifted, both at the state level, but also by the town manager, reopening our buildings to the public, we really don't have anything for this person to be able to do.
Okay, so let's do a hypothetical. Let's suppose the governor lifts the restrictions on in-person gatherings as of September 1. How soon would you be able to hire an education coordinator after that? And maybe this is also for Court as the school representative. How soon would the school be available for that sort of thing?
So I can't speak to the school, but that would be our first step, would be to contact the superintendent and the principal of probably the high school and the middle school and be able to gauge their interest in that. And I assume that would then go back to the school committee. Court, no.
Yeah, and if it was part of a general governor approved reopening plan, it wouldn't require our formal approval. We would simply be notified.
And then pending the administration and school committee's blessing, we certainly could advertise. I always like to have an advertisement up for at least 3 weeks, perhaps a month. We could do something if it's an emergency situation where we do something on a rolling, where we say, after 2 weeks of collecting, we'll start interviewing, but people are welcome to apply, for 2 weeks after that. And we have a series of pre-placements and some things like that. So it usually takes about 6 to 8 weeks to onboard someone. But again, we're at the mercy of whenever that determination is made, both at the state level, through the town manager's office, and then of course at the school, since we're using their facilities.
Got it. Ruth, did you have a question?
I did. I'm wondering, the funds that were in FY21 for ed coordinator, were they encumbered and slipped into FY22, or have they been consumed for another purpose?
So the only way that you encumber funds is to have an outstanding purchase order or something where we have it go to. What this ends up doing is we under expended for FY21. We also under expended in FY20. And so the delta that we have from that under expense goes into the fund balance, which is why you see the fund balance from year to year growing. It's a healthy thing. And right now, we're just going to continue to grow it until either there's some very large, massive capital plan that we need to do. And I can equate that back to the fund balance was relatively healthy when the new high school was being built, and that fund balance was used almost in its entirety to be able to create the studio that's currently there. So it's nice to have that because it's able to sort of build up over a number of years and be used for something.
Thank you.
But question for you about the franchise renewal process. Do you have any funds set aside for the franchise renewal process, and how would that be accounted?
We don't have it specifically laid out for that. We are able to do purchased services, which you can see right here is around $19,000 to have someone come in and assist. I actually and Carlin, I think I had said this to you, I'm actually looking for the committee to take a very active role in that, and I would be proposing that to the town manager. And I'd certainly like at least the initial conversations to be at the committee level, because I think that's frankly where it's best placed.
Sounds good. Appreciate that. Okay, so that's where it would be show up. It's not like you have to set aside anything else for it. Okay, got it.
No, but I guess what from the committee, and this probably is on a future agenda, is whether the committee would like to do the initial sort of due diligence on their own, or whether they'd like to hire a firm or a consultant to kind of look into that. And I know the town of Carlisle, Court and I were able to talk about that, is going through a process there, and they've been in contact with Erin. And it could be that perhaps we want to utilize that same vendor. But I think that's something that I'd like a recommendation from the committee on.
Good. I'll definitely put on the future agendas. Good. Thank you for giving us something to do next year. Really appreciate it.
Well, just ask. We have plenty.
Cord, I remember when that came up at the last meeting, Cord, about using the Carlisle consultant. Did that seem feasible after you talked to them again?
Yeah, I think we should take a look at a couple of these people who specialize in this, and I'm sure Kate will be doing so and reporting to us. What I found interesting about the Carlisle situation, they're negotiating now is, and Kate certainly knows this and probably more than I do at this point, but they're looking at postponing their contract, extending it 1 year. And they think one of the benefits is that it would sync up with Concord's timetable. So that's worth noting.
Yeah, and I've actually asked to get a copy of just the contract that they have for that, as it's a public document and they're already doing it. And so Tim is working on getting those things over so I can share it with the board, because it seems to make sense that somewhat going through these exercises for both Carlisle and Concord, at least in tandem, if not shortly after one another, given that we have very similar information that we're going to be providing. So I was joking with Tim that perhaps since they've already done most of the due diligence for Carlisle, and that involved talking to Concord, that perhaps we get a discount. So we'll see.
Well, we may not save money, but we will save time. Okay, let's talk just 2 more seconds about this, then get back to the budget. As far as timing for the discussion about the franchise renewal, do we have to start before the June meeting, or is June soon enough, Kate?
I would think June is soon enough. We certainly couldn't pay anyone until after July 1st. So I think we have some time, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't be taking a look and having possible folks that you want to have, help us with that.
Great. Okay, I'll put that on the June calendar then. We'll start that process. Thank you very much. Okay, now let's get back to the budget. Erin, it's all your show.
So that was the general overview. I had a couple of questions for the committee, actually, if you all wouldn't mind indulging me. So one of the things that, here it is. So I left the FY22 capital for the satellite facilities as the exact same as it was last year, assuming that we didn't really get to do anything in terms of satellite facilities for last year because we were mostly at home and did not need them, not in the same capacity at least. So I was wondering if the committee had any ideas as to what would be good. So what we have on here right now is updates for the school and other building facilities, having something in the Harvey Wheeler, having some sort of supplemental space to use, and other Concord facilities. Now, I understand that we don't know what the next year, couple of years are going to look like. I think it's fairly safe to assume that there might be more of a video component to many of the things that people are doing. We are much more used to it now, so that might be something to consider. But I wanted to get the committee's opinion on if this was a good idea in terms of the satellite facilities for the Capitol.
Okay, I'll start, then I want everybody else to jump in. I think that you've got an idea that there was some needs before the pandemic hit to upgrade the Harvey Wheeler. I think that is a place where some of the funds should be spent. I don't know about the rest, but a Harvey Wheeler would be one of those areas, and I'm assuming that the townhouse now is up to snuff at this point. So that's my impression. Oh, and the other question I have, I understand the town's going to get $5.5 million. Is any of that going to be spent on these type of facilities or on other things related to this? I don't know. I don't know what the status is.
So I think you're talking about the economic recovery bill. So we don't have any plans for that right now, unlike the last set of funding that we got that needed to be expended by the end of the calendar year, and there was sort of a rush to identify things that we needed relative to the pandemic. I suspect that much of that is going to go into economic recovery and to areas where the town actually lost revenue, including meals tax, occupancy taxes, and parking meters. That said, I think that any group can come forward with something that they want to propose. But my understanding, and we don't necessarily have any information or any qualifications that have been given to us relative to that. But I don't think that PEG necessarily suffered because of the pandemic, and so at least monetarily. And so I think that it may not be as a high a priority as some of the others. That's my very objective, only Kate's opinion.
Got it. Okay. All right, other committee members. Corey?
Yes, on the satellite facilities, I think there may be an opportunity there to do something with the housing authority. There are events over at COA that housing authority residents in the past have either gone over to COA to participate in. But for things like lectures or where there's a situation where there's a give and take with the audience, there is a fairly well outfitted community room at this point, just in terms of all of the seating facilities. There's a fairly large widescreen TV, but there would have to be equipment set up to make that two-way. So that I think would be potentially a useful step there in terms of use. And there's a kind of a secondary potential use there that I think probably is best described as maybe a hybrid Zoom meeting, where there'll be, say, residents in particular who are room bound or have trouble navigating around in the building, or now with the kind of the aftermath of COVID, it's not quite clear if there's going to be more reluctance by some residents to actually go out and participate when there's a crowd. And so that's potentially, I guess, equipment that might be shared, or it might overlap with whatever might happen with hybrid Zoom meetings more general, since, you know, it seems that there's some broader applicability for that.
Okay. Definitely something to consider and to look at. Yeah.
Other observations?
I would suggest this, sorry, this is Ruth. I would concur. I think the addition of space to the housing authority units would be very valuable. I also agree that kitting out the Harvey Wheeler is important. We use it very, very heavily for this kind of purpose. My only concern there is if we then think that this becomes their main mission, instead of all of the many other activities that we have fit into the Harvey Wheeler. So I think they need the ability, but it should not overwhelm everything that's already there. And thirdly, I do think if there's a source of funds and we can use it to benefit the middle school, it's always cheaper to build in than retrofit. And that would be fully cognizant that it would have, the facility would then have some of the same limitations that the studio has. You know, the first goal is to keep the kids safe, but we can use it in many other times of the day and year. So in order of preference, I think Harvey, housing, and school.
Actually, I agree with that. I think it's a good idea. Okay, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I think Harvey Wheeler's been overdue for a while. We have lots of public meetings there, lots of hearings there, in addition to COA activities. And I would agree, we don't want to distract from their main mission over there, but it is a community center that we use heavily for public affairs. Housing Authority, I'm not really qualified to speak to the level of activity that might occur there if we were to outfit it. Middle school, I'd love to see some further incentivizing over there so that the middle school, which is the middle school media center, they don't call it a library, they call it a media center. They characterize it as the soon-to-be heart of the new school. And to Ruth's point, it would be a shame to equip it later, not sooner. It's quite inefficient to do that.
Spot on.
Doesn't that fit in with your plan there on some kind of a media facility in the middle school?
Well, that was my dream, and it still is at some point, but I'm not sure what the timing would be. It may not be fiscal year 22, but based on the designing process and the application, that may be later on. And I don't know if it's appropriate to be planning now for capital for fiscal year 23, 24, 25. I'd love to see something depending on what the design subcommittee can do.
And we were
So
notified, we were notified today that the design subcommittee is to effectively stand down and let the full building committee handle everything going forward. I don't have details on where that decision originated, but that came from the architect this morning. So stay tuned.
Good to know.
Is
Thanks.
that SMMA?
That's correct.
Okay, so Aaron, that means that there are 3 areas that our committee is interested in, is basically spending money on for capital improvements. The 3 that we've talked about, the Harvey Wheeler, the Housing Authority, and then the middle school at an appropriate time.
Okay, those are things to definitely take a look at.
Wait, Scott, did you have something else that you wanted to add? I noted that. Okay, go right. All right, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, no, I was just saying, thank you for providing your input. It's really useful. So that's the basic overview. And I don't know if you all have any other questions or if you want to move on to your next agenda item.
Yeah, let's, I want to make sure we go through all of this and hopefully in the next 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and go through the other pages, please.
Go through the other pages?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I mean, the Carlisle's pretty straightforward. We pay a certain amount each month, or we get paid, excuse me, we get paid a certain amount each month for our studio and equipment fees, which will be going up accordingly as they do each year, as well as we have projected based on what we have been receiving for the past year, what our approximate contracted work will. It's actually been fairly steady recently, which is really good to see, starting to come back a little strong. So we are hopeful that that will continue as the meetings have been fairly frequent. We've even been getting some questions from, or some other programs from various Carlisle members that are looking to put something together. So all of that comes together to be our projected $75,000 fees that we are incorporating into our budget. Our Comcast here, this is what we are getting year after year. Let's see, down here on the bottom is fiscal year 21. So this is what we received, I believe. I think this is all this year. So it has declined slightly, but it is what we have been expecting to see. And then we already took a look at the capital here. Our capital's fairly steady year after year while we're looking to purchase. We just went through the satellite facilities here, so we'll make some changes there. And then our capital for our 10-year hasn't been looked at too much. It's been pretty steady. We are going to be taking another closer look at it to see what sort of things are going to be needs to be replaced in the next few years. We are reaching the end of life of some equipment that was put into the studio when it was originally built. Some of the various things have started to break. Some of the things have been serviced as we go, such as, lights that need a small component that we can fix. We've done some updates and kept our teleprompter going, but there's some other things that will probably need to be replaced sooner rather than later. And we are taking a look and sort of seeing what there is there that needs to be replaced. And things like computers are starting near their end of life as well. So we're going to be taking a look at those.
Okay, Ruth has a question, but I have one first. The server equipment looks like it's going to be running out in the fiscal year 25-26. Is that the next big expense?
So I think that Kate might be able to speak to this. Yeah,
Yes, that is.
I'll say that we're handling that a little bit with IT, so I'm not quite sure where that's at right now.
Yeah.
And that
So
was
the
the big
servers
thing.
that are there are 3 of them are the originals, and then 5 were updated some years ago, and they all predate my arrival at Concord. So many are coming up on 10 years. Somewhere between 10 and 15 years is usually the useful life, and so that would be a major capital expense We don't have it captured here yet because we just have a new CIO, as everybody knows. And he, while wonderful, is being pulled in a million different directions. And so we do have it on his to-do list to at least take a look, or when he fills the open positions in IT, to have assign someone to take a look. So you'll see that number change.
Okay, Ruth?
My question was along those same lines, knowing that we have the new IT guy and that he's already hip deep in some of this good stuff. This seems to be aged equipment. And, maybe Phil could take a shot at this. And I'm assuming that IT looks the same to at IT, whether it's video or office, but I would hope that it's not the last thing he looks at, given the design life of a lot of this stuff. And it seems as if in the old days when we were CCTV, we couldn't go to the town for this kind of stuff because we were separate entities, but now this is the town. And I wouldn't want us to overlook it simply by being polite people. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Was
All
there
right.
a question in there for Phil? Bill, I don't know if you want to speak to the useful life of the equipment that you have there, or its performance. I mean, I recognize that you're relatively new as well, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, things are functioning. Our tech specialist has been able to keep an eye, on top of things. We've had to have a few calls to, the service providers. And, things like the desktop, like the Apple computers. I think there's some discussion about, should we be going to something that's more comparable with the rest of the town? Like that's in discussion, I know. So we are aware of it. And again, these are going to be conversations, I think that will be picking up in the near future.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Scott? Scott, you're on mute still.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, sorry. There's a mute button on the cord of my headset. I apologize. Yeah, if the machines are reasonably well maintained, 10 years is getting there, but you can extend it a year or two. That's my background is hardware development, but so that's the insight I would offer you. Obviously, in 10 years, the performance of the computers has changed dramatically, and what typically overtakes you is the increase in the software demand on those machines renders older machines progressively less useful. So
Yeah,
there's no cliff. There's no electronically reliability. There's no cliff as long as you keep them cleaned and maintained. But obviously, there's a point at which you want to replace them. Hard disks might be a different story, and that's a lot. That's one of the things you need to think about.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, I'm good. Yes, David, I see your hand, and I also see Vince's hand. Here's what I'm going to do, folks. I'm going to take Vince first, and then David, and then I'm going to see if the committee members are ready to vote on the budget, whether they think the budget is appropriate. I'm hoping that you are, but I do want to get the conversation first. Vince, let's go first. Go ahead, Vince.
I just had one question on the studio equipment. I know that there's been some conversation about the conversion of the old DVDs. Does that involve any new equipment, or is that material that you already have in the studio? Phil,
It would either probably have to cost an equipment or cost in personnel time. We really don't have the, short of an individual like burner or remover, to take the DVD to strip the video out. So it'd be a laborious process. Again, maybe something for, an intern to do, just to like strip all these things out. Or again, it could probably be sent out to a service. But again, we'd have to look into the costs.
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate that. All right, David, go ahead, David.
An appropriate moment to come in with something that's been introduced previously, now that we're talking about servers. As we're all aware, the archive is a hot point of interest, if not concern. In today's world, when you step back, the natural thing is to think about putting it in the cloud. And of course, when you do that, you obviate any requirement to keep up equipment, keep it running, and so forth and so on. There are always trade-offs, naturally. There was a fair amount of resistance to Fortune 500 companies early on. An awful lot of that has disappeared now. We could discuss it, but the key point is, particularly when we're talking about budget here, particularly when we're talking about the servers, we might very well be served far and away better if we put our archive in the cloud for the various reasons that I've just covered there.
Yeah, that would actually be something I would recommend you turn over to the new CIO, because he has backup requirements that are associated with email and other things for all the municipal. He has a whole raft of rules that he has to deal with there, and so it might be once you take it out of the building, sweep it into some infrastructure that he's putting together. But there is the one downside to the cloud is the recurring cost. It does add up over time. So.
It does. At the same time, what you do, obviously, as we all know, is make that economic trade-off between the capital operating of the capital and those costs. And you only find that out if you look into it. And I think it's quite important what you're pointing at, Scott. Bring the CIO into that. He's going to be himself considering these possibilities.
Thank you, David. Phil, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I did. The other week we met with the town archivist, and this is going to be a conversation I think that the PAC needs to be aware of and probably weigh in as well. According to the archivist, for government records, the state only requires that 6 months that these records have to be kept, the digital, these like the videos. We've obviously been keeping them longer than 6 months, but town policy is going to dictate, and he was going to look into that. In fact, I think that's one of his charges, is to develop a longer range plan for archives. So, there's obviously the government function of what we do, and then of course there's other things, community programming and the like. So these are things that I think have to all be taken into consideration. I don't have an answer, but again, it's something I think that we should all be talking about as we continue forward.
I agree. And before you make any changes, please let me know about this so we can talk about how long to keep videos, because we've had several calls for videos that are more than a year old.
That's right. And we've been able to, pull a few things out. In fact, we had a former student who graduated, I think in 2014, was looking for his high school he was like a valedictorian, and we were able to actually find the information. But yeah, when you're talking like 5 to 8 years out to 10 years out, it's getting a little bit harder.
Good. Okay. No, hold on. I'm going to do a quick time check. It's 2 o'clock. We're going to be lasting until 2:30, and I want to make sure we've got time to consider this. David, you're welcome to speak, but I'm hoping that it concerns the budget and what's on the budget, because that's what we're focusing on right now. Go ahead, David.
It's just following up the discussion right now. It's no more than 15 or 20 seconds. Yeah, those of us, and I'm hardly alone, who look back to 5, 8, 10, 12 years for town meeting videos. It's not a small thing at all in the governance of the town. Not a small thing at all.
Great, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to poll the members of the committee. Are you ready to vote on this budget? Ruth, how do you feel about this? This is not the actual vote itself, is are you ready to vote? Ruth?
I'm definitely ready to opine. I don't know if we have an entitlement to a vote on the budget. I think we would simply be acknowledging that we've seen it and like the general direction or whatever.
That's a good point.
I'm ready for that.
Okay, good. Because what we normally do is make a recommendation to the select board about this. And it's
We
something.
would
that we-
certainly find it helpful and it doesn't necessarily need to be a formal vote, but to know that PAC is in support, and if not, what areas need to be changed. Unfortunately, the warrant went to the printer, so I'm not trying to rush anybody, but if we need to change the number, I'd like to catch it so that we don't have to print an unknown amount of pieces of paper that have to say, you know, as printed on the paper instead of as printed in the warrant. But certainly we can do that if the committee wants more time.
Okay, Vince, are you ready to give an opinion on the budget or a perspective?
I think I'm comfortable enough with all of the big numbers. I don't know if we'll ever look at any of the little ones, so.
Okay, and Court, what about you? Are you comfortable with the budget?
Yes, I am.
Okay, folks,
Thank
then
you.
what I'm going to say is that we've got a consensus here that the people are, the committee members. Hold on, I forgot Scott. Scott?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
Sorry about that. You can kill me later.
No, no.
All right, it sounds like we've got a consensus here from the committee that we think the PIG budget is appropriate, and we appreciate the town managers and the public information communication managers' efforts in preparing this budget and presenting it to us so that we can ask questions, and we look forward to working with you folks again in the future on this. I think that's sufficient. Ruth, from your protocol perspective, does that meet the candidate?
I think that they probably would like something formal on paper, so why don't we have a motion to authorize the chair to send forth correspondence to that effect?
You're making me do work. Okay, fine.
Yes.
I have
Don't
a
look
That
little-
way-
you know, this video is great. You don't look very happy.
That's all right. That's fine. It's actually the finance committee's hearing that's coming up that I was most concerned about how this committee felt about it, but we can do the same for both. All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second. No, I'm sorry. I moved.
You can't
Second.
do both of them. You can do one
I'll
or the other.
second
Quick.
it. Second, Scott.
Thank you, second by Scott. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Carlin Reed votes yes. Ruth Lauer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Scott Hopkinson, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, Vince Carlson
Yes,
and Court Booth, how do you vote?
Yes.
Fine, I'll work something up. Thank you all very much. Appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you, Kate, and thank you, Aaron, as well.
Do you need anything more from me? You think I have a 2 o'clock, but I can say be a little bit later if I need to be.
I think we're okay. I think
That's
okay.
great.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
great. And just to make sure that I'm marching in the right direction here, when I get the information from Carlisle regarding their agreement with Comcast, I'll just send that over to you, Carlin, even though you're not gonna
Yeah.
talk about it until June. You can just have the documents and have your time to review them. Okay, that's great.
Yes, please. I'll put it in the queue for materials. That's great.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're 2:05. What we're gonna do now is switch over to the next item, which is the MMN update. So Phil, this is where you get to tell us what you've been up to. Go ahead, Phil.
Sure, I'm going to try to keep this brief because I know the time is limited here. I'm just going to start off with a couple numbers. It just seems to be the good way to start. In the past month, approximately 48 productions have been created and posted up to YouTube. 40 of those were mostly government meetings. Other ones, including League of Women Voters, had several productions, football game. In fact, got another football game coming up, and Concord Days, as well as the Pandemic Heart. So I've been working. I know earlier there was a little conversation about the number of videos that are up on YouTube as opposed to the TV. One of the things, because of the sheer volume of government meetings, we basically post on the TV because I think they're the ones that people really want to know about: the select board meetings, the finance committee meetings, and the school committee meetings. Other boards, although they're just as important, it's just, I think, an easier thing for people to get that on demand at YouTube. That's one of the big pluses of that. But by running the main functioning meetings, unless of course, people do ask, and they want to see something in particular on TV. But again, as you can see, with 40 meetings a month, that could be very confusing. And actually, that actually kind of leads me into the next part here. I know that there had been some questions, and we've been looking into it about the online TV guide. So we've looked into it, and Comcast, they use a third party for their the channel metadata. And this company is called Grace Note, and they do across the country. So it's not, just here in this area, this company, Grace Note. What they do is they have a one-time $500 fee. Then they charge $500 a month per channel. So if we were to go to something like that, that's approximately $1,500 a month, which equates to about $18,000 a year for the posting of what the programming is that we would be putting on. As a short-term solution, our tech, Mark Foley, if you go to, or if you happen to see the community bulletin board, he's created 3 channels or 3 pages that come up now. One will say government, one will say education, and one will say public. And that actually will have what we have programmed into, again, our server here, what's going to play up and coming for the next 3 days. So it does provide somewhat of a guide, but again, it's only going 3 days out. It's still a lot of information.
Yes.
So that's our short-term solution. May not be the best of solutions, but again, trying to make things a little bit more accessible for the community as best as we can. And finally, just up and coming, Patriots Day is coming upon us, and we've been working with different groups here in the town, and actually a little bit beyond too. We've been working with a consortium of museums and sites here in Concord, and we will be having a series of programs, which is going to be in the Concord Monitor, but just very quickly. On April 19th, we will have something called Patriots Past, which is digging through our archives of past Patriot Day events. At 8 a.m. will be the virtual Patriots Day celebration. We're actually going to be filming with the celebrations committee next week some of the events that would normally take place on April 19th, or Patriots Day, I should say. We will also then be running some programming that we've been working with some of the other groups in town, as I say, this consortium of museums for our tangible past. And it's going to be looking at, it's almost like a connecting sites and artifacts to April 19th, things that have taken place. So again, working with that, that'll actually be a real interesting piece. Be looking at the David Brown site over at the National Park. There's nothing there today, but then you go over to the Concord Museum, and the door that was part of the house is there. So, it should be a real interesting project. This has been under, again, a cooperation working with the National Park. And we will have this air throughout the day on Patriots Day, starting at 7 a.m., going to 10 o'clock. And then at 11 o'clock, it's going to kind of repeat itself. So that'll happen several times throughout the day. That's everything in a very quick nutshell. Of course, also, Newbury Court, excuse me, has reached out to us. They're interested in bringing back programming, hopefully beginning in June. So we'll see how that all starts to play out. But they're actually looking at a talent show, and we're going to see what we can do and how we can help them with that production. So things are picking up somewhat.
A talent show? That sounds like fun. Okay,
Yes.
sounds great. Okay, committee members, do you have questions for Phil? Who has questions? Go ahead.
I just have a quick comment, and that is huzzah to Mr. Pauly, because we have been grumbling about TV Guide forever, and this seems to be so functional and just in the moment. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate that. And again, this is, it's getting the feedback from, the community, you folks, to seeing what we can do. And I'm glad, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Vince, how about you?
Phil, I wondered if there's been any discussion so far on ongoing committee coverage, after the pandemic period here is over.
I haven't heard anything. I think, again, a lot of the committees, that meet, they've been sending us items. I really don't know how that's going to go forward. Will they usually they're meeting in person. And again, it's like, how does that get recorded? You know, where if we were to go back to the old model, say tomorrow, we primarily for live coverage, again, are getting the main functioning, you know, committee and board meetings, select board, finance committee, school committee meetings. This has opened up a whole area where we can get a lot of these things, but, you know, we just wouldn't have the staff to be able to do it, to be honest with you.
It's not just the staff, we'd also need the location. For example, our committee would normally meet in the townhouse in the select board room. And until the townhouse is open again, we wouldn't be able to physically be together.
Well, one of the remarkable things, you know, about this pandemic is that, you know, the town government meetings have probably been covered better than they ever have in the past. So
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, any other committee members, questions before I open up to the public for questions for Phil, Cord or Scott?
No, I would echo the sentiments about the program information, how important that is. So thank you.
No comments.
All right, sounds good. Any members of the public have questions for Phil about MMN's updates? 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. Let's see what we got going on now. All right. Let's turn now to the PAC Programming Awards. And it's 2:13. We've got about 15 minutes left, or yeah, about 15 minutes left. So I'm just going to touch on this briefly, and we'll talk some more about it at the May meeting as well. I just want to let you know, the idea again of the PAC Awards has been to try to give special recognition to those folks who've done a good job in producing videos, in shooting them, starring them, whatever, roughly for the past year. Now I circulated a list of about 21 suggestions, and Ruth has sent in another list from about 9 or 10 selections. And I think there may have been some other suggestions that I've heard about. I know actually Mark Polly sent me a suggestion that I didn't have included about last year's town meeting. Now, Carol, at the beginning of the meeting, before the meeting started, you had said that you had some ideas of other videos. Do you have any for us now, or is there something you want to send me, or what's your suggestion?
I can send them to you, but in particular, I'm thrilled about the Concord Carlisle varsity sports being on TV when they're home games, especially the basketball, because I'd never be able to see my granddaughter play, and it's been marvelous. So that's great, and I love the West Concord 5 and 10 tribute. So I will send you the ones that I thought, and I agreed with somebody else with the Concord with the Carlisle COA jazz concert, the drive-in jazz concert. It was very well photographed. You know, when you saw the hands of people play, I mean, it was really very, very good. But it's amazing the number of things on that YouTube. I spent hours looking at different things and finally had to stop.
That sounds like fun, Carol. Go ahead and send it to me. I'll add it to the list. And
Okay.
then in May, we'll do the actual vote of whatever we want to do. Okay, a question for the committee about these awards. I know we've got 3 categories: public, education, and government. How many awards do you want to give in each category? Or do you care, or what? Do you have any sense of a structure of how we should be doing this selection of the selection process? Ruth, what do you think?
I don't think the number is important as much as the enthusiasm people are bringing to their nomination, so to speak. You know, for instance, if somebody is going to say, well, which in government are we going to select? Are you going to make sure that the award only goes to the committee with the most votes? That doesn't work for me. But that committee that through some kind of consensus, we say, this issue was brought to the fore and now we understand it better. That's a whole category as far as I'm concerned. This video came forward and now, we have enthusiastic sports fans. That's another category. I would find it difficult. I have my favorites.
Oh, well,
But-
that's what I'm going to want to know is what your favorites are. Not right now, but for the May meeting especially. I'm going to ask everybody to be ready to come with at least 5 favorites of whatever, at least 1 in each category, and be ready to say why they are your favorite, because that will help. As even though we have so many videos that were done, there's only so much room on the plaque. So we
Yeah.
have to keep without the print getting really, really tiny. So we have to make sure that it's somewhat legible. So I'm guessing that I'm thinking maybe 10 to 15 total, but I don't know. It kind of depends on how big a plaque we get and that sort of thing. So that's my thoughts. Do you have other thoughts? Any other thoughts? Vince, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One for Phil. And that's it. I wonder if Phil has an opinion about some of the award categories. I'm thinking particularly of the ones that are recognizing, really great technical or craft performances, like somebody was mentioning the photography on the jazz concert. So, are there people on your staff, Phil, that, would maybe benefit by or appreciate, really getting recognition for great work?
Well,
that they've done?
that's much appreciated because again, I think, we look at this as just it's just a simple tool. You go out, you set it up, you record and whatnot. But, I definitely would say that, folks on our staff do take great, it's an art. I mean, and they've been learning and, so they've gone to school, for this. And, that I hadn't thought of it that way. I don't think any of us have given it that kind of a thought, but, for the appreciation of the artistic element, I think is great. But again, without overloading folks with like lots of different categories. One of the other things too is, and again, I think this is a category that I don't know if it exists or not, but because a lot of the productions we've done we're working with people now who are filming their own segment and submitting it to us. I'm thinking, for example, like the Carlisle holiday, Angela Smith basically did all the coordinating, getting people to submit videos. And of course, you had all kinds of quality videos. I mean, it was great. The whole thing was great, but we just cut it all together. So it's like, that's more of an editor as opposed to, a cinematographer or something.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to cut this part of the conversation short. We still have a little bit more. So May, here's your assignments, everybody. Pick your 5 favorites and be ready to talk about why they are your favorites. The only categories I have right now are public, education, government. You'll just be able to say why you think they're good. Ruth, go ahead.
This is a comment regarding the PEG aspect. The list that you sent out, or some wonderful person sent out, had in parentheses which category it fit. But as I look at these on YouTube, they are not identified by category. And since we have all of this empty space on our channel, I would hope that if something was well viewed under education, then it might run on public and it might run on, well, maybe not government, but who knows? I mean, it would be hard to say the League of Women Voters education outreach wasn't government because it was simply education, but it's hardly.
Okay, so you're saying that those 3 categories really are kind of arbitrary. We should just look for the top 10 or 15 that we like the most, in other words.
I would, because I find it too hard to find the initial posting.
Okay, fine, dandy. I'll go with that. All right, everybody, top 5. On May, we'll talk about it. Okay, I'm about ready to move to the next topic, which is the liaison reports. And I'm going to skip over the PAC charge. We're going to do that in May, perhaps June. If you have any other revisions to the charge, be ready to talk about that or send it to me, send some ideas. The only one that I have right now is reducing the committee size from 7 to 5, but I'm open to other suggestions, and we will continue to have an open discussion on that going forward. Okay, so going to liaison comments. Now we've got a couple liaisons here. I see Terry Ackerman is here. If she's not a liaison, but she wants to give an observation, that's fine. Carol, you're our Council on Aging. Court, you're on school. Who else wants to? Okay,
Did you want me
Carol,
to
go
s-
ahead.
Okay,
Yes.
I was just going to say that on the April newsletter that the COA put out, because there is no TV guide on the TV, I asked that they might want to just let people know that Channel 8 in particular can have some programming that the COA does, and they did put that in, and they did put a link to the TV guide that's online. But now that you said that there's one on the community bulletin board, I'll have to look into that and have them note that, because they never know what programs are going to be on. So that the only time they ever list anything in the guide is when they know for sure that something is going to be produced. But this way they're saying to people, look, and don't know how effective it's going to be, but hopefully it will be.
Let us know how it works out, okay?
Okay.
Court, do you have any liaison comments from school committee stuff?
No, nothing in particular. You know that we're reopening next week at the elementary level. So that's keeping us occupied, but nothing PEG related.
Okay, sounds
you.
good. All right, are there any public comments? 1, 2, 3. All right, sounds good. All right, is there anything else that we need to discuss before we wind this up? Okay. Well, look, folks, I appreciate that. I'm going to need a motion to adjourn with a reminder that our next meeting is on May 6th at 9:30 in the morning via Zoom. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
And can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. All in favor, roll call vote. Carlin Reed votes aye. Ruth Lauer,
Aye.
Vince Carlson,
All right.
Court Booth,
All right.
and Scott Hopkinson.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Aye and bye. Thanks very much. Enjoy your afternoon. Bye-bye.